The heavy oak door of the Whitaker family mansion in Georgetown slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the rain-soaked night. In that moment, Levi Whitaker knew his father, Senator Edward Whitaker, had chosen power over blood. "You are no son of mine," the senator had snarled, his face twisted in disgust as Levi stood there with Jack Thompson by his side, the man he loved more than anything. The dinner had started as a rare attempt at family connection, Levi hoping against hope that his father might finally see him for who he was. But when Levi introduced Jack as his partner, the air turned to ice. "This perversion ends now," Edward spat, his voice carrying the weight of years in the Senate chambers where he railed against what he called the erosion of traditional values. Levi's mother, Eleanor, sat frozen at the long mahogany table, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She said nothing, is always torn between the man she married and the son she bore. Levi felt the familiar stab of betrayal, but this time it was deeper, sharper. He had prepared for anger, arguments, maybe even silence. Not this outright erasure. As Levi and Jack stepped out into the pouring rain, Jack's hand steady on his shoulder, Levi turned back one last time. The lights of the mansion glowed like a fortress he could never re-enter. "I can't believe he did that," Levi whispered, his voice breaking despite his efforts to stay strong. Jack pulled him close, their bodies shielding each other from the storm. "You don't need him to define you, Levi. We have each other." The drive back to their small apartment in New York felt endless. Levi's mind raced through memories. He remembered meeting Jack during his sophomore year at Columbia University. It was in a literature class where Jack, with his easy smile and sharp wit, had challenged Levi's sheltered worldview. Their first coffee turned into hours of conversation, and soon stolen moments in the library stacks became the foundation of something real. Jack came from a working-class family in Chicago, out and proud since high school, a graphic designer with dreams of his own studio. Levi, the senator's son, had hidden his truth for years, fearing exactly this moment. Back in the apartment, Levi collapsed on the couch, the weight of the evening crushing him. Jack made tea, sitting beside him, listening as Levi poured out the pain. "He's always been like this," Levi said. "Politics first. Family image second. Me, I was just supposed to be the perfect heir." The decision to come out to his parents had been months in the making. Jack had supported him, but warned it might go badly. Now the reality hit like a freight train. The next days were a blur of phone calls ignored from distant relatives, headlines in conservative media hinting at family troubles for the senator without specifics yet. Levi threw himself into his job as a junior reporter for an online news outlet covering local politics, ironically. Jack worked late on client projects, coming home to hold Levi through the nights when doubts crept in. "What if I made the wrong choice?" Levi asked one night. Jack's answer was firm. "Loving me isn't a choice you regret. Hiding who you are was." Meanwhile, in Washington, Senator Edward Whitaker paced his office, the rejection weighing on him more than he admitted even to himself. He had built his career on family values, church alliances, and tough stances against what he saw as moral decay. Acknowledging Levi would mean political suicide in his circles. Yet in quiet moments, the image of his son's face haunted him. Eleanor tried to talk to him that night. "Edward, he's our boy." "Not anymore," he replied coldly, but his hands trembled as he poured a drink. The choice was made, but the cost was already mounting in his soul. Levi and Jack's life in New York began to heal the immediate wounds. They walked Central Park hand in hand, facing occasional stares but finding strength in their bond. Levi started writing a personal essay about identity and family, pouring his heart into words he might never publish. Jack encouraged him, their love a quiet rebellion against the world's judgment. But deep down, Levi wondered if the door was truly closed forever, or if some crisis might force it open again. 3 years passed in that fragile peace. Levi advanced at the outlet, earning bylines on stories about inequality and human rights. Jack landed a big contract designing campaigns for LGBTQ nonprofits, their apartment now filled with framed photos of trips to the coast and quiet dinners where they talked about a future, maybe adopting a child one day. The pain of the denial never fully left, but it became a scar they both touched gently, reminding each other they had chosen love over approval. One evening, as they cooked pasta together, Jack turned to Levi with a soft smile. "No matter what your father says, you are enough." Levi nodded, pulling him into a hug, the kind of moment that reminded him why the fight to be himself was worth every tear. Yet in the back of his mind, the senator's words lingered like a shadow, waiting for the next storm. The price of that rejection was clear. Levi had lost a father, but gained a life built on truth. Jack had stood by him, sacrificing family gatherings of his own to be the rock Levi needed. Their decisions had shaped a partnership stronger than blood, but the world outside, especially the political machine in D.C., never let them forget the divide. Levi and Jack built a life in New York that felt like their own small victory against the odds. Mornings started with coffee on the fire escape, watching the city wake up, Levi typing notes for his next article, while Jack sketched logos on his tablet. Their love deepened through ordinary days and the occasional challenge that tested their resolve. When a neighbor complained about the pride flag they hung in the window, Levi chose to knock on doors and talk rather than argue back, explaining his story with calm dignity. Jack supported him every step, even when it meant missing a deadline to join a community march. The societal prejudice they faced was never far. At Jack's design firm, a client pulled a project after learning about Levi's father, the conservative senator. Jack lost income but chose integrity, refusing to hide their relationship. Levi felt the guilt of that choice weighing on him. "I cost you that job," he said one night over takeout. Jack shook his head. "You didn't cost me anything. Staying true to us is the only decision that matters." Their internal conflict surfaced in quiet conversations, Levi wrestling with a voice in his head that still sounded like his father's disapproval, Jack battling the fear that Levi's past would always pull at him. Back in Washington, the senator rose higher, pushing legislation that limited protections for same-sex couples, framing it as defending American families. Edward Whittaker told himself it was principle, not personal, but late nights in his study, he stared at an old photo of Levi as a boy and felt the crack in his armor. Eleanor grew quieter, her letters to Levi returned unopened. She attended fundraisers smiling beside her husband, but the toll showed in her tired eyes. The family pressure mounted when a cousin called Levi, begging him to reconcile for the sake of the family name. Levi refused the decision, costing him the last threads of extended family ties. 3 years after the dinner, Levi proposed to Jack on a bench in Central Park, the same spot where they had their first real date. The ring was simple, a silver band engraved with their initials. Jack said yes through tears, and they celebrated with close friends in their apartment, toasting to a future they chose despite the world. The engagement brought joy, but also new scrutiny. A local blog linked Levi to his father, sparking online hate. Levi chose to write an op-ed about love and belonging, the piece gaining traction and bringing both support and threats. The price was real, sleepless nights for Jack, who worried about safety, but their bond only grew stronger. Meanwhile, Edward's health began to falter. Stress from the campaign trail and the secret ache of his son's absence led to fatigue he ignored. A routine physical revealed elevated blood pressure, but he pushed it aside, focusing on re-election. Marcus, his chief of staff, urged him to double down on family values rhetoric. "Sir, the base needs to see you as unbreakable." Edward nodded, but inside the moral dilemma gnawed. He had denied his son to protect his career, but the isolation it brought left him questioning if the trade-off was worth the empty chair at holiday tables. Levi received a call from Eleanor one afternoon, her voice hesitant. "Your father isn't well, but he won't admit it." Levi listened, the old pain surging. He wanted to help, but the rejection still burned. Jack advised caution. "You don't owe him anything, but if you choose to reach out, he'll stand with you." Levi's decision was to send a neutral card wishing recovery, the small act a test of his own growth. The response never came, but the gesture shifted something in him, a step toward peace, even if the bridge remained broken. Their life in New York continued with plans for a small wedding, the choices they made every day, proving that love could thrive in the shadow of denial. 3 years after the proposal, Levi and Jack stood at the altar in a small Brooklyn venue surrounded by chosen family, the ceremony simple and full of laughter. Vows exchanged, hands clasped tight. Levi promised to choose Jack every day, no matter cost. The wedding was a celebration of resilience, but news of it reached D.C. through a leaked photo. Senator Whittaker saw it on his desk, Marcus sliding it over with a warning. "This could hurt us in the primaries, sir." Edward stared at the image, his son's smile a knife to the heart. He chose silence publicly, but privately the betrayal of his own blood fueled a new wave of harsh speeches on the floor. The societal pressure intensified. Levi's outlet assigned him a story on political families and identity, forcing him to confront his past in print without naming names. The piece went viral, drawing attention from both sides. Supporters praised his courage, critics called him ungrateful. Jack faced backlash at work, to a major client dropping him for associating with the senator's son. The decision to stand public cost them financially, but strengthened their commitment. "We pay the price together," Jack said as they budgeted tighter for the month. Family pressure on Eleanor peaked when she visited New York, secretly meeting Levi at a cafe. She cried, hugging him tightly. "I love you both, but your father." Levi listened, the internal conflict raging, love for his mother versus the boundary he had set. He chose forgiveness for her, but not reconciliation with Edward. The meeting ended with Eleanor promising to keep in touch, the small connection a lifeline amid the storm. Then the betrayal came. A family friend close to the senator leaked old photos of Levi and Jack to a tabloid, the headline screaming the senator's secret gay son. The story exploded. Marcus had not stopped it, perhaps even encouraged it, to solidify Edward's image as a man of unwavering principle. Levi read the article, his hand shaking, the invasion reopening every wound. Jack held him through the night. They chose to respond to the joint statement affirming their marriage and calling for compassion, the decision sparking more media, but also waves of support from unexpected places. In D.C., Edward faced the leak with fury, confronting Marcus. "This was not how we handle family," he snapped, but the damage was done, his polls dipping slightly among moderates. The moral dilemma hit hard. Had he created this monster by denying Levi, or was the leak the price of his silence? Eleanor confronted him that night. "Our son is happy, Edward. Is your career worth losing him forever?" The senator stormed out, but the question lingered, his internal battle intensifying. Levi and Jack leaned on each other, the betrayal forging deeper trust. They took a weekend trip to the coast, walking the beach hand in hand, discussing the future. Levi decided to keep writing truth to power, Jack choosing to expand his freelance work. Their life moved forward, the scars visible, but the love unbreakable. The stakes rose as Edward's health declined further, unnoticed by all but his doctor. Senator Edward Whittaker collapsed during a late-night strategy session, his body finally betraying the years of denial and stress. Rushed to George Washington University Hospital, tests revealed severe kidney failure, polycystic disease progressing rapidly. Dialysis started immediately, but a transplant was the only long-term hope. Eleanor sat by his bed, pale and terrified. "We need to find a donor," she whispered. Edward shook his head weakly. "No one from the family." The choice to keep Levi out even now stemmed from pride and fear, the price his own survival. News of the senator's illness hit the wires, Levi reading it at his desk in New York, the shock mixing with old anger. Jack saw the headline, too, his face concerned. "What are you thinking, Levi?" Levi paced the apartment, the moral conflict tearing at him. Hate the man who rejected me, or save the father who raised me? The decision weighed heavy, blood versus betrayal. Jack listened without pushing. "Whatever you choose, I back you, but don't do it out of guilt." Levi secretly flew to D.C., getting tested at a private clinic, the results a surprise, perfect match. The doctor called it unexpected, given the family history. Levi sat in the hotel room, staring at the report, his hands trembling. The sacrifice would mean surgery risks, recovery time away from work, and facing his father. Jack flew down the next day, holding Levi as he explained. "I have to do this. It's not forgiveness, it's humanity." Jack nodded, the worry in his eyes clear, but his support unwavering. They chose to tell Eleanor first, her tears a mix of gratitude and guilt. When Edward learned the donor was Levi, he refused outright. "I won't take anything from him," he told the doctors, his voice weak but resolute. The internal struggle raged, love for his son clashing with a public image he had built. Eleanor begged him, the family pressure now reversed. Marcus advised against it, warning of media spin. The senator faced the ultimate dilemma: accept life from the son he denied or face death with principles intact. Levi waited in the hallway, the confrontation inevitable. When Eleanor brought him in, Edward looked away. "Leave." Levi stood firm. "This isn't about us, Dad. It's about you living." The decision to offer despite rejection was leave us alone, the price vulnerability he had sworn to avoid. Jack waited outside, ready to catch Levi if it broke him. The tension built as doctors explained the match, the unexpected compatibility, forcing Edward's hand toward consideration. File 5. The health crisis escalated, Edward slipping into dialysis complications that left him barely conscious. Eleanor made the call, Levi and Jack rushing to the hospital, the air thick with unspoken history. In the room, Edward woke to see his son, the shock evident. You? Levi nodded. Him a match. The arguments erupted, Edward accusing Levi of seeking publicity, Levi firing back about years of abandonment. You chose politics over me every time. The moral debate raged, forgiveness not required, but life, yes. Jack stood by Levi's side, his presence a quiet strength. When Edward snapped at him, too, Jack responded calmly. I love your son. That's not a crime. The confrontation peeled back layers. Edward's youth under his own strict father revealed in a rare, vulnerable moment. I was raised to believe this was wrong, he admitted, the words costing him pride. Levi listened, the internal conflict easing slightly as he saw the man, not the senator. The decision to proceed with the transplant came when Edward's condition worsened, no other donors available. Levi signed the papers, the sacrifice concrete, now risks of infection and lifelong medication accepted. Jack held him the night before surgery. You're the bravest person I know. Their embrace in the dim hospital light, a moment of pure connection, the price of love tested again. Surgery day, arrived the team prepping both men. Levi lay on the table thinking of the life he might give back, the choice made with eyes open. Edward in the next room battled, regrets the awakening, beginning in a haze of anesthesia. The operation succeeded, the unexpected match, saving him, the immediate aftermath monitored closely. Recovery began in adjacent rooms, Levi waking first sore, but stable, Jack at his bedside with water and words of pride. Edward stirred hours later, the new kidney working, the physical relief mixing with emotional turmoil. Doctors allowed brief visits, the conversations halting at first. Why did you do it? Edward asked. Because you're my father, Levi replied simply, the decision not about redemption but right and wrong in his heart. Confrontations continued, Marcus visiting and pushing Edward to downplay the donation, publicly the betrayal of trust when Edward learned Marcus had fueled the earlier leak. You used my family for votes, the senator snapped, firing him on the spot, the choice costing a longtime ally but gaining self-respect. Eleanor mediated between father and son, the family pressure shifting toward healing. Jack and Levi shared quiet moments in the garden, the sun warming their faces as they processed the ordeal. Levi's strength inspired Jack, their bond deeper, the price of the transplant, Levi's temporary weakness offset by Jack's unwavering care. Edward's internal awakening grew as he watched them from his window, the prejudice he clung to cracking under the weight of gratitude. Media swirled the story of the donation, leaking the senator forced to choose transparency or denial. He chose a short statement thanking his son, the small step toward change, the consequences, political allies distancing themselves. The tension peaked in a hallway argument where Edward admitted, I was wrong about so much, the words a turning point. Weeks in recovery, Edward grew stronger, walking halls with Levi, the talks turning to past decisions. I traded your happiness for votes, the senator confessed, the regret raw. Levi shared his pain, the years of silence, the price both paid. Jack joined sessions, his perspective helping Edward see love beyond labels. The moral dilemmas resolved slowly, Edward's choice to publicly support his son in a follow-up interview, shocking his base but freeing his conscience. Political fallout hit hard, endorsements withdrawn, but new doors opened, moderates reaching out. Eleanor stood taller, her own awakening complete. Levi returned to New York with Jack, the surgery scars healing, the emotional ones fading. Their future plans resumed, the adoption process starting, the decision to build family on their terms. Edward visited New York, unannounced, the reunion tense but honest. I can't erase the past, but I choose a different future, he said, hugging Levi, the act costing his old identity but gaining a son. The group dinner that followed, full of cautious laughter, marked the beginning of new bonds. Full recovery brought Edward to Brooklyn for a weekend, the apartment filled with stories and tentative laughs. He helped Jack with a project, listened to Levi's latest article, The Transformation Complete. I see now what I almost lost, the senator told them, the price of his old choices clear in the lines on his face. Levi and Jack stood together, their love the anchor that weathered every storm. Edward returned to the Senate, a changed man sponsoring bills for equality, the backlash real, but the internal peace worth it. Family gatherings started, small, Eleanor beaming at the table. The scars remained, but the awakening had reshaped everything. Levi and Jack married again in a bigger ceremony, Edward walking his son down the aisle, the moment heavy with meaning. Their life continued richer for the trials, the choices they all made defining their paths. Can one life-saving act truly redeem years of rejection and prejudice, or is change only possible when facing mortality?